Okay. Good. So it's welcome again to everyone to our session today on 3 key interpersonal skills you need at work. I'd like to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about our organization before we start. My name is Susan Cullen. I'm president of Quantum Learning Solutions, and we first started delivering training in a live virtual format over 12 years ago, so we were early adopters of it, and I've really been looking forward to sharing this information with you today in this web class in a live virtual format. Our specialty areas are leadership development, communication, and team building. But we're also really known for our extremely high learner retention rates. And this is because we use a real blended approach to most of the sessions we do, whether they're in the traditional classroom or the virtual classroom. A lot of our programs use some sort of assessment instrument, a lot of practice exercises, but we're very strong on reinforcement, and I think that's one of the reasons why we have such long-lasting learner retention from our programs. So that gives you a little bit of background about us. The question is, why are we providing this program, a free web class for you, and what's really the purpose of that? And one of the reasons is that we just have found there's a lot of interest in this topic, and a lot of people have been really going to our blog and asking for this. To give you some background, I'm a co-author of 2 books on leadership and career development, and I also have been a guest speaker for ASTD and SHRM for their nationwide training sessions for some time. So I'm very busy, but we had a lot of people coming to our blog who were really interested in this topic on interpersonal skills, and I felt that with the experience that we have, we could provide you some valuable and insightful information on this topic. So I want to share with you our blog, first of all. We've just had such an interest in it here, and so we're happy to share it with you. I also want to just mention that we have on the right-hand side of it, all the topics are categorized, such as leadership, communication, team building, time management, stress management, meeting management. You can also sign up to get any of the new blog posts that come out. So feel free to access this as a good resource for yourself or anyone in your organization who's interested in current research and current topics on a lot of things that are of interest to people at work today. Another reason that we wanted to provide this is that this topic and the ability to share this with you really mirrors our own corporate values. When people are asked so many times what they most value about the company they work for, you will frequently hear people say it's the people. And it's the same with us. We tend to build very long-term relationships with our clients. A lot of them have lasted well over 18 years. With big companies that you'd recognize like Allstate, Panasonic, Merck, Xerox, and many others. And when they think of us, they think of a trusted partner who truly has their best interest at heart. Now, some of you on this call are our past clients and some of our current clients, but some of you we haven't met until now. And I know that we've had over 150 people registered for this session today. So we're hoping that you find what we have today valuable and that this can be the beginning of an opportunity for us to get to know each other better. Now, one thing to mention before we start to talk about some of the key things that we've learned on the topic of interpersonal skills is that we're all in the same boat. We've all experienced interpersonal challenges. There was a time in my past career that I really didn't feel as happy in my job as I could be because I just couldn't understand why people seemed cold sometimes or disinterested sometimes. And I knew I was just going to work and just getting by, but I really wasn't giving it my best. Until I began to learn some of the information that I'm going to share with you today about what really makes people tick and why they're different. And once I began to understand them, then it made a huge difference for me. And so I'm hoping that you'll find that it will make a huge difference for you as well. So let's look at our agenda for today. One of the things that we first want to talk about is the impact of poor communication in the workplace. Why is it a key issue to talk about? And then from a personal perspective, why is it important to you? Why are good relationships important to you? And then we want to look at some real key tactics that you can use right away to look at what we call the 3E formula. It's the 3 interpersonal skills that you need the most that can make the biggest difference in your productivity but also in your happiness at work. And those are how to encourage connections, how to empower joint problem solving, but also how to engage people to want to help you. And, I'm going to give you the best and the most that I can in this hour we have together. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to put 20 years of experience into this hour. So I promise you that by the end of this session, I'm not going to leave you hanging, and that I will give you some additional information for where you can go to learn more and to access more information for your ongoing learning. Now, we want to make this interactive today, and I'm going to use a lot of the resources that are in this platform. So one of the things that we'll do, there will be certain times when I will ask you to raise your hand. And if you look in the attendee box and you look to right next to your name, there's a place where you can raise your hand. In fact, if we want to try it now, let's just go ahead and try. If everybody could just raise your hand so I can see that you see it. Look at the attendee box. Great, thank you. I see several of you coming through. Go ahead and raise your hand. It's right next to where you see your name in the attendee box. So right next to where you see your name. You may not see all the attendees, but I see so many of you sitting your name, raising your hand, so that's good. So we're going to be using that. I'm also going to be asking you questions that you'll see come up on the screen. And then there will be times when you can respond to open-ended questions in the question box that you have on your screen as well. So feel free to do that. We want to use all of these different opportunities to interact. I'm going to lower everybody's hand now so that if you do have a question, please make sure that you put it in the question box. We're going to do our best to answer all those questions, and we have some of our team members standing by to answer some of those as we go. Also, one thing that we're going to be doing for you today, in addition to sending you a recording of this, we also have created a flip book, like an e-book that you can read through pretty quickly, and we're going to be sending everybody, all 150 of you that are registered, we're going to be sending everybody that as well. So you'll have a chance to review that and take that with you, as well as the recording, and we should have both the recording and the flip book to everybody by tomorrow. So just wanted to give you a heads up about that. Okay, so let's go ahead at this point then, and let's start to talk about why is it important to you to improve interpersonal skills. So why do you want to really come and learn some techniques about interpersonal skills? What is it that's important to you to do that? And so I'm bringing up a question right now and asking you to think about why is it important to you to improve interpersonal skills. And please make your selection. Please select one of these that you can see here. Is it because you feel that you can have better relationships, both personally and at work? Is it that you think there's less stress, that you can have more productivity, that you can enhance communication, or is it that you think you're here because other people need this and you want to make sure you can pass it on to them? So go ahead and make your selection. I see that a lot of you are still responding, so go ahead and show us what you think. And it looks like we've got about 2/3 of you have answered so far, so I want to give it just another few seconds, and then I'll show you what we said and kind of what your thoughts were about why is this important to you. Okay, so let's take a look, and we'll see. It looks like the answers are still coming in. All right. Okay, let's take a look, and let me show you what we found. So one of the things that we see when we take a look at this is that the biggest reason was that 36% of you felt that you wanted to have better relationships, both at work and at home. But it was pretty close, actually, between improved productivity and also enhanced communication. Not that many of you said because you wanted to reduce stress in your life, and I'm very happy to see that most of you, that nobody said it was because other people needed it. So that's a good sign, and we're really glad that you've shared those thoughts with us. So when we talk about why improving interpersonal communications, we are going to look at the impact of it as it relates to relationships, what's important to you, also improving productivity and communication. But let's talk about it, first of all, for those of you that are especially interested in improving productivity, what's the impact of poor communication and at work and in the work environment? And, one of the things we see is that a lot of these issues, probably probably many of you can relate to. In fact, I'd like to ask you to raise your hand if you can relate to any of these, so that I can just see if you're with me as we go. One of them is, of course, low morale. Nothing can lower morale more in your organization than poor communication. Hard feelings and frustrations can sometimes spread like a wildfire. So if you can relate to that, raise your hand. Or sometimes internal miscommunications. What happens here is that we have a lot of delays in planning. You have people doing the same thing. You have to redo work. That can be a challenge. And it's also really key to look at the impact on dissatisfied customers. If communication is poor and they don't get the service they expect and there's misunderstandings, people can get pretty upset about that sometimes. And last but not least, performance just is poor when communication is poor. And most communications break down through vague language or unclear instructions, and this is just magnified now in the era of email that we have. So I can see that from those of you that are raising your hands, we've got a lot of you. In fact, what I can see is that most of you for sure can relate to that. So again, that's one key thing that we see in the world of work. But here's some interesting studies that I wanted to also share in terms of how poor communication impacts productivity. The second bullet point here, where they talk about the U.S. Joint Commission for Hospital Accreditation, they found that the main reason of inadvertent patient harm is communication failure in over 70% of cases. So, in other words, the main reason that somebody doesn't get the service they need, or they're in a hospital, or there's a mistake made in a hospital, or sometimes that can be a really serious mistake, 70% of the time, it's communication problems. Communication problems between the doctors and the nurses and the staff. So all of that can be pretty significant. Now, also what we see is that, I'm glad to see many of you weren't here because of stress, but when we just look at the impact of stress from poor relationships at work, a lot of people say that's a key reason for company lawsuits. And one company found that when they started to provide conflict management systems, better communication, opportunities for people to talk things out, that they had a significant savings of 50 to 80%. But here's another really important study by Towers Perrin with 50 global companies. And they found that those organizations with highly engaged people increased operating income by 19% and earnings per share almost 20% in 1 year. Now, if we look at what type of increase we get in the stock market today, especially, this is pretty significant. And the opposite of that is also true, that companies with low employment and low employee engagement levels showed declines, pretty significant declines. So big picture, there's a real relationship between the level of engagement we feel and the relationships we have at people at work. And it impacts the companies we work for, but it also impacts each and every single one of us. So let's talk about why good relationships are so important at work to you personally, and what's in it for you personally. Now, one thing that we see is that we spend a lot of time at work. This isn't a surprise to anyone. But if we spend 8 to 9 hours a day, some of us more, then we find that we can many times tend to talk to people a lot more or see them a lot more than we maybe see our families during the work week. And we are not machines. In fact, we've got to be able to connect with people that we work with. And so one of the next questions that I want to pull up, and let's see what your thoughts are about this one, is do you feel, when we start to look at this, that during the week you spend more time with coworkers than you do with those people you live with? I mean, just during the week. So let us know yes or no, and tell us what you think. During the week, are you spending a lot of time with those people you work with, in which case, they're pretty significant. They have a real impact on how happy we are, and those relationships have a real impact on how happy we are in our life in general. So it looks like we've got a lot of responses in, and it's pretty unanimous. Let me show you what we've got here. So it looks like we see 85% are definitely saying yes, that during the week we spend more time with people that we work with than people that we live with. And so what happens is we've got to be able to recognize that the time we spend with those people is really important. Another thing is that we know that a single person working alone just isn't going to make the best decisions. We make better decisions when we work together, and we need people to discuss those various issues, help us evaluate pros and cons, and help us just reach better solutions as a result. Another thing that happens in today's world is corporate culture is really becoming a key way for organizations to have a competitive advantage. A culture of support and trust encourages innovation. And innovation is critical for progress because, there's no growth in today's world if you don't have innovation. So that also makes a big difference. We also see that every now and then we just need a pat on the back, and that can go a long way because it keeps us feeling energized. It charges us up when we're tired or when we are discouraged. And we need that encouragement, and we need each other for that. But the bottom line in the whole thing is pretty simple. We are just happier when our relationships at work are better. And when that happens, there's an absence of conflict. You don't have any agonizing sleepless nights because of conflicts with coworkers. And I know that I've had that happen before. I'm curious to know if I'm the only one that's ever experienced that. Could you raise your hand and just let me know if you've ever had any of those agonizing sleepless nights where you begin to find that you just can't, you've got problems with a coworker or a relationship problem, and it keeps you awake, and you're just really challenged because of that? Because I see a lot of hands going up on that one too. We can relate to that. We all know that. So, big picture, we are happier when our relationships are better. And the only person who can really control our relationships is us. We can never make anybody do anything, but we can focus on our own skills and focus on the things that we can do to build better relationships. Anyone who's ever been a parent, a spouse, a team member, or a leader knows you drive yourself nuts trying to make someone else change. But we can learn the skills that can help us encourage what we need so that our relationships are better. So let's start with the first one. And this is the first E in the 3E formula, and that is to encourage connections with other people. Because, as we talked before, we don't work in a vacuum. We get things done with the help of other people. And so we've got to look at how do we build stronger bonds and bridges to them. But first of all, let's look at where we are, where we're starting from. And we're not really looking all that happy. In fact, in this particular study by the Gallup Healthways Wellbeing Index, they found that happiness has been declining in the last few years. And when they dig into that deeper, they find that a lot of it is due to unemployment rates, that a lot of people have felt a lot of stress around losing a job. But what they also found was really significant is that a lower rating in their relationship with supervisors and managers and having poor interpersonal relationships was also a key reason why people either quit and left or quit and stayed. And probably most people quit and stay. You know the difference between those people that check out and leave and those that check out and stay. So we can begin to see that people may not be engaged because of some of those kinds of reasons. And so it becomes really important to see that connection is really key here. That in the midst of all of this, having a supportive, connected environment for employees and for all of us together, it just makes sense. It can sound very intuitive. Yet at the same time, with all that's happening with smaller workforces and higher workloads, a lot of people have gotten so tied up in email that they don't even have time for face-to-face connection and communication. And one of the reasons that we hear so often is that people just say, well, I've just gotten too busy. So here's the next question for you. I'm going to bring this next question over, and let's see what you think. Let me launch it. Here we go. Okay, do you think that your organization sends too many messages through email that should be in person instead? And just say yes or no. Let's see what the responses are. Because a lot of what's happening is we're moving so fast that people tend to put efficiency over effectiveness, and we may find that we are not answers were, and I'll share that with you now. So one of the things we see is about 58% are saying yes, we do, and 40% are saying no. So I'm glad to see that it's not more people saying yes, although that's almost 60%. That's a pretty high percentage. But I'm glad to know that it's not 85%. But in any event, what we do know is that this impacts relationships and it impacts communication. Now, here's another key thing. What do you think is the main reason for struggles on a team? The reasons why teams begin to struggle. Is it more interpersonal issues or is it more technical competencies? And so one of the things that I would, here we go. Now you can see the screen better. Okay, is it more interpersonal issues or is it technical competencies? So if you think it's interpersonal issues mostly, please raise your hand. And let me just see, like if we were in a meeting together, how many of you think it's mostly interpersonal issues, the reasons why teams of people struggle, as opposed to technical incompetencies? So if you think it's mostly interpersonal issues, go ahead and raise your hand, and I'm seeing quite a few hands go up. And actually, those of you that are raising your hands on that, you're right. It is mostly interpersonal issues as the source of team struggles. In fact, research shows us that it's about 85% of the reason. Now, one of the reasons why that is such a key challenge is that a lot of it is because we have different approaches to work. We don't work the same way. We don't want the same things from work. We don't have the same things that motivate us, and our styles are different. So what I'd like to do now is we're going to hear a audio clip from one of our e-learning courses on understanding behavioral styles. And after we hear that, I'm going to bring up a polling question, and I'm just going to ask you if you think this person would be easy or hard to interact with. So let's just listen to our next sound clip.
Results are what's important to me. I prefer to deal with people who are clear and can make quick decisions. I want people to be direct with me, get to the point.
Okay, so here's the next question. Do you think that she would be easy or hard to interact with? If you think she'd be easy, click easy. If you think she'd be hard, click hard. And tell us what you think. And just on that short little segment that we heard from her. Okay, well, it looks like we've got a big percentage of you, almost 80%, saying she'd be hard to interact with. But yet notice that not everybody feels that way. We've got 22% of you that are saying you think she'd be easy to interact with. So key thing, we're not all the same. We don't want the same things. We don't think the same way. We're not motivated the same way. Okay, now, in just a minute, we're going to go to the next one. And you're going to have a chance now to, let's do this again, and let's hear the next audio clip.
That's so not what I want. I find her really hard to work with. I like it when people are friendly. My friends say I can talk to anybody, strangers, people I've just met, wrong numbers. I guess I just like people. It's difficult for me when people won't let me get to know them.
Okay. All right. So let's ask this next question again. What do you think about her? Do you think she'd be easy to interact with or hard to interact with? So send your thoughts over. Let's take a look. She's kind of different from the first one. Do you think she'd be easy or do you think she'd be hard? Tell us what your thoughts are. And it looks like we've got most of the responses in, so I'm going to show you what the answers were. So one of the things we can say, we're still split. We've got 56% of you who are saying you think she'd be hard, but 44% say you think she'd be easy. So that also tells us, again, that we have different perceptions. We have different perceptions of people, and we have different perceptions of the way that they work. Let's do one last one of these. And this time, what we'll do is have an opportunity to hear this very last segment. And so let's go now to hear the very last one.
I would rather spend time preparing than engaging in small talk. I have very high standards, and so I prefer to take time to think and make careful decisions. I find that people often want to push me into making decisions before before I have had time to research the question at hand.
Okay. All right. Let's send this one over. What do you think about him? Do you think he'd be easy or hard to interact with? So send us your thoughts on this one. Again, he's fairly different from the last one that we just heard. What are your thoughts? Would he be easy or hard to interact with? And again, it's looking like we've got a pretty good split here. Okay, let me show you the responses. And what we can see is we've got, again, almost 60% saying hard and about 41% saying easy. So big picture, once more, we are not all the same. Now, one of the reasons that this happens is because for a lot of times we see something that we talk about as different behavioral styles. We think of this as the DISC approach. It stands for the different styles that you see there, D-I-S-C. The DISC approach to understanding human behavior. And one of the things that's important to realize is that each one of these styles has different priorities, which you see around the outside of the circle. The dominant style, the D style, we call it for short, tends to really value results. They want to make things happen. They're very action-oriented, and they like challenges. We'll look at them a little bit more in just a minute. Whoops, went too fast there. The I style is going to be very interested in people. They're the people. So they're also moving fast. They like action, but they're very focused on collaboration and enthusiasm. The steadiness style is a little more slow-paced, but very supportive, very focused on listening, very good team player. And the C style is very focused on accuracy and quality and making sure things are the right way. So one thing that you can see here is that they have different goals. So the goal of the D style is really to be able to focus on getting results. They want to hit that target. They're going to go above, around, over, or through whatever obstacle or impediment is in their way to hit the bullseye. Now, as you look at all these characteristics of them, what's important to realize is that sometimes what causes the most conflict or challenge in our interpersonal relationships is if our style is different from another person and we don't know what their hot buttons are because their hot buttons are not the same as ours. And so what happens is if you've ever had a situation before where you don't know what happened, but somebody just really responded or reacted to something you did, and afterwards you're left kind of scratching your head and wondering, how did that happen? It's probably because you didn't know what their hot button was. Another way to think of it is everybody has a fear. They have a goal and they have a fear. Think of the fear as the hot button. So now I'm going to ask you an open-ended question, and feel free to type your answers to me in the question box because I can see you. So go ahead and tell me, and I can begin to start to see you here. If the goal of the D style is to get results, what do you think the fear is? So send me your thoughts over in questions, and I can see some of the answers there. Yes, Terry, failure, that's a key reason. We can definitely not succeeding, absolutely. Donna, failure. A lot of you saying failure. Definitely. So one of the things that we see is that can be a key reason. Not living up to expectations, Jen. Absolutely. What they don't want is to have an obstacle that's put in their way that they can't meet. Not meeting the goal, Terry. You are absolutely right. A lot of times if they feel like they can take control, they can hit that. They can make that happen. But their goal isn't having control. Their goal is to get results. That's their key thing. So they get very discouraged by a lot of micromanaging, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of things that are going to slow them down. And if we don't know that, when we're working with them, we can be unconsciously hitting their hot button, and it has a huge impact on our ability to work with each other. Let's go now to the I style, or the influencing style. Now, the I style, their goal is to have positive interactions with other people. We also see them as very fast-paced, but they're the people. So they're going to always see the glass as half full. They're going to see the situation as half full. They're very enthusiastic. They can talk to anyone, anywhere. They smile a lot. They're approachable. They're animated. They use a lot of humor. And probably you know of people in your life that have demonstrated that tendency as well, too. But here's the next question. If the goal of the I style is to enjoy being with people and have a positive interaction, what do you think their fear is? Isolation, absolutely. Not being liked, not being accepted, Lois, for sure. Isolation again, see that coming up. So for sure, what we see is having either a negative interaction or not feeling part of the team, Terry, being unpopular, all of those things are going to be things that are going to be their hot button. It's going to be what demotivates them. If they're excited and they're enthusiastic and they're coming to you on a team because they really think you can make this happen, and you don't share that same enthusiasm and they feel like it's kind of a wet blanket, that's a hot button for them, and that could impact your interactions with them. Let's go now to the S style. Now, the S style goal is really to maintain harmony. They're very people-oriented too, but if the I is more upbeat and fast-talking and the best talker, the S is a little more moderately paced. They're the best listener. They're very focused on the needs of the team, not so much on just kind of meeting their own agenda. And you can always count on them to be there. They're motivated by helping, by being dependable, by just being a really solid team player. When you have conflict on a team and you need a peacekeeper, they're really great at that. So they bring a lot of value to an organization as well. And now here's the next question. I see some of you are already sending your answers over. You kind of know. If the goal of the S style is to maintain harmony, what do you think the fear is? And arguing and disagreements, you're actually right. Conflict, Jamie. Tension between staff, Jen, absolutely. Chaos, Karen, absolutely. All of those are things that are going to be a challenge to them. So let's go now to, last but not least, the C style and the conscientiousness style. Now, the C style is also more moderately paced, but their focus is on their work being accurate. Their goal is that it be accurate, that they will set even higher standards for themselves than the organization would, and they really want to strive for perfection. So they tend to be very focused on details. They ask questions other people wouldn't even consider or think about. They keep the non-detailed people out of trouble and out of legal problems, and they're just very focused on making sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. So if their goal is that their work be accurate and their work be quality, what do you think their hot button is going to be? Being short-timed and rushed, Terry, you're right. Time is too short, Donna, absolutely. Other people being disorganized, yes, absolutely. Inconsistencies in work, Jen, yeah. But it's also not being perfect. I love that thought that just came through. Because they don't want their work to be criticized. They want to make sure that their ability to do the right thing is being recognized, and that their work is quality. So criticism of their work in a vague, abstract, sweeping way isn't really going to be of value to them. So there's an instrument called the DISC Workplace Profile. In fact, I'm interested to see if you could raise your hands. How many of you, I'm going to lower them first, how many of you are familiar with DISC? If you could just raise your hand and give me a heads up if you've heard of the DISC concepts before. Binto, thanks. Becky, thanks. Carmen. Okay, so some of you have. What's unique and interesting about this particular latest instrument is that it's not at all the old graph that it used to be. There's been a lot of new research and a lot of additional validation to this particular instrument. And one of the things that we find is that not only does it provide feedback about yourself, but it also gives you a lot about the goals and fears and motivators of other people. And if you've ever taken the older instrument, one of the things that you'll find is this is just much more improved and enhanced. It came out in the last year or so. And people tell us they are really amazed at its accuracy because it's looking at it in a much more sophisticated way than we ever were able to do in the past. Now, here's an example of one of the pages in the profile that I think is really helpful. because the profile is quite in-depth, and it will show you where you are and what happens with you when responding to other people. So in this particular sample, we have a person who's an S style, and what happens and what do they need to do to increase their effectiveness with the D style when they're trying to connect. So in this particular first session, first part of our communication skills that we're talking about, building connections, this is really helpful to know, because this is like an operations manual. It tells you what you need to do specifically to be more effective with other people based on your style and based on their style. Now, we're also going to talk about in a moment, what do you do when you need to solve problems together? And this is a great resource in this particular section there. And also when conflict occurs and things get tense. So it will have a page like this for you with each style, and it really gives you a lot of really good input on that. Okay, so just wanted to mention to you that is a good resource as something that some of you may be interested in. It's just a really great tool to tell you about your own style and how you can work better with other people. But let's go now to the next E, the second step in the 3E formula, and that is all about empowering joint problem solving. So in other words, it's how do you address, let's say if you've got, one key challenge for a lot of people is that there are situations on teams where somebody's not doing things the way they need to, they're not pulling their weight, they're missing deadlines, they're making mistakes. How do you as a team member get them to want to solve that problem, especially if they don't report to you? Or if they do report to you and you're a leader, how do you do it in a way that keeps them motivated? That's what we're really talking about in terms of problem solving in relationships as it relates to relationship issues. So here's the next question. I'm going to bring this over as an additional question for us to think about. And that is, what makes having a performance conversation so difficult? So please send us your thoughts over and tell us what you think about this. Is it that it's difficult because you don't want to have conflict, or you don't want the other person to get upset, because that can definitely happen? Some people don't want to approach these kinds of discussions because they're afraid it's going to make the situation worse, or you're just not sure how to do it in a positive way so that people have a good response to it, or is it all of those reasons? So tell us, from your perspective, what's the main reason why you think this conversation can be so difficult and why it can be such a challenge? And I'm going to now show you the results. So one of the things that we see is that 46% of you said all of the above. It's all those things. But what I also recognize, and I thank those of you that are really candid about that, most of us really don't enjoy conflict, and we can see 25% of you said that. And that's part of it. That you don't want to make the other person get upset. That can be a key reason. You don't want to make it worse. We only had 4% there, but that can definitely be a reason. And don't know how to do it in a way that's going to have a positive outcome and a positive interaction. So there are a lot of things around this, and we've got a formula that really helps people have these conversations in ways that the other person changes their behavior, but at the same time they feel good about it and you enhance your communication along the way. So, so let's take a look at some key things around it. Now, one thing that we know is you've got to have, in this conversation, there are some key communication skills that you've just got to share. And one of those is, as we can see here, is the need to have a foundation of appreciation with each other. The need to make sure there's a level of trust before you even go into that conversation, because people know that you truly do value them. But then there are some very specific, tangible skills, like be real specific about the behavior so that you can talk about the behavior and not get into the personality. Ask them questions, especially open-ended questions, to get a lot more information from them. And also listen and paraphrase and make sure that you hear them and that they know you hear them, because one of the key reasons people tend to raise their voice when they get upset is they think they're not being heard. So if they just say it louder, maybe it'll get through. And that's one of the real reasons for conflict. So these skills are really key. Now, here's the big big picture. We obviously, we don't have time to go through the entire 7-step process for this, but here's the most important key of the 7 steps, and that is to really let the other person feel ownership for the solution, and you do that by the second bullet point. You ask them what their ideas are for solving the problem instead of just telling them what you think they should do. So in other words, if they've missed a deadline and it's impacted your whole team, you ask them, what ideas do you have for getting this to us by the deadline next time? And when they can take ownership of it and they can share their ideas, they don't feel that they're being talked down to or treated as children so much. And another key thing that you're going to want to make sure you do, though, is you've really got to have establish a time to follow up afterwards. Don't just go all the way through this conversation and let the whole thing fall apart because you haven't had any opportunities to check in with each other going forward. So this whole focus on empowering joint problem solving goes a long way in an organization, because one of the key things that it does is it really helps people maintain that relationship, because you've used the interpersonal skill of asking good questions and making sure that you're paraphrasing so that they hear you. But the key question you're asking them is, what ideas do they have? You're not telling them. You're really asking them for their thoughts and treating them with respect and honor. And when that happens, people are going to respond. They're going to be more motivated. They're going to want to really be more, really work with you better. Now, the last step, the third step in the 3E formula, is to engage people to want to help you. And, that's, if you can't get their engagement to want to help you, it's really hard to go further on any of these other parts. So one of the things that we see that's real important is, let's just look at what's happening today with that. And one thing that we see is that, you can see in this particular study, that although 69% of employees were satisfied with their jobs, fewer are satisfied with recognition practices of their employer. So one of the things that we see is, especially, like you can see right down here, people either strongly disagreed or disagreed that they were satisfied with the recognition practices of their employer. Recognition is really important. But what's most important about it is not the plaque on the wall. It's not the name in the newsletter, although those things can be helpful. It's usually the one-on-one, sincere, honest communication and appreciation that people have from other people in their job. So I'm going to ask you now one more really key question. And bring this over. Okay. And this question is, do you think there's room in our organization to express more appreciation to each other? Yes or no? Do you think there's room to express more appreciation than we do? Tell us what you think. In your organization at large, as a general tendency, is there room to do this more? And it's not surprising the answer that we're getting. Let me show you what we got. One of the things you can see is that 95% of people are saying yes to this. Now, this is really significant. And I will tell you that in all the organizations that we do leadership development in and team building in, one of the things we see is that this is the response to them too. I think it's part of being human today, and I think it's a natural need that people feel they're adding value, but they also, in our fast-paced world, want to know that that value is seen. We're moving so fast that people want to be able to start to feel that they are appreciated, that value is seen. Now, here's a bonus bit of trivia that I'll share with you, but it's really, really important, and I think about this a lot. I share it in many of our classes, and because this was just a really, really interesting study. And there's a professor named John Gottman who did a really in-depth study where he could find out which couples were going to stay happily married together and which weren't. And somehow or another, he was able to do this in some kind of a recorded scientific way. But when it was all said and done, he said that he could predict with almost 90% accuracy who was going to be happy and stay together and who wasn't. And what he found is it all comes down to this. For every one negative look, jab, smirk, comment, or thoughtless action, there were 5 positives, 5 actions of thoughtfulness, 5 appreciations, 5 kind, thoughtful deeds for every one negative. Now, we were talking about this in a leadership class not long ago, and somebody said, boy, I spend more time with the people I work with than the people I live with during the week. This principle should hold true at work, too. And I couldn't agree more. So what we begin to see is appreciation is really critical, and what's so good about it is it doesn't cost anything. It's one of the most easy things that anybody can implement at any time to build connections and help other people want to help you, because if they think you appreciate them and you come to them and you sincerely let them know you value them, they're going to want to continue to do that, and otherwise they won't, and it makes a huge difference. Stephen Covey wrote a book. It's been out a long time ago that probably many of you have heard, called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it really made an impact on my life. I thought about it a lot because his 4th habit in his book was about listening, but what he said was, seek first to understand before trying to be understood. So in other words, if you really want to make sure someone else hears you, you have to hear them first. If you really want to make sure that someone else appreciates you, you have to appreciate them first. Kind of like what we see here. You have to give people what they want first, and then you'll find it's easier to get what you want. And it kind of turns everything upside down. A lot of people think, well, maybe if I just demand it, maybe if I just tell them what I want, maybe if I just go in and scream and yell about what I want, I'm going to be more effective. But it actually isn't the way to improve relationships. It's not the way to have long-lasting impact and connection. And so what we see, again, is that appreciation is one of the most powerful tools you have to engage other people to want to help you. It's free. It's what people most want at work. It's what they most want from their peers. It's what they most want from their manager or their leader. So in so many organizations, when they have people focusing on that, it changes the engagement level. It brings things higher. People begin to feel that one of their most fundamental human needs is being addressed. So we've now talked about a lot of things, and I just want to, let's just look at where we've been. We've talked about the impact of poor communication in the workplace and some of the studies around, how it can really impact productivity. We've also looked at why good relationships are so important to you personally and what's the benefit to you, and that you are just happier when you have better relationships. We spend so much time with people at work that it makes sense that we are happy when we're doing it. We've looked at an overview of the 3 key interpersonal skills, the 3E formula we call it, of encouraging connections. And encouraging connections because you understand what makes people tick. Encouraging connections because you can see that they have different behavioral styles, that they're not all the same, that someone else's hot button may be very different from yours, and not knowing what that is can be a major source of conflict. We've talked about empowering joint problem solving by asking the other person to try to solve the problem and really engaging them through a questioning process. And we focused on the need to encourage people to want to help you because you want to help them and you value and appreciate them. And then that's the best way to have reciprocity, that they'll want to respond as well to you. So at this point, I don't want to leave you hanging. There are some of you that might be interested in learning more. And I did want to tell you that we are offering a interpersonal skills virtual class that's really pretty involved. It's got these 5 different steps in it, and you'll notice that it includes the profile that we talked about before. It also has 2 90-minute web classes. The first one is all about encouraging connections and understanding DISC, and this is really following once you've gotten your own profile. The second one is really looking at digging in deeper into the 7-step process of empowering joint problem solving, and how do you get other people to really want to be able to help you. And because you've been able to address the issue, the one thing that is the biggest stumbling block for most people, and that's really addressing behavioral problems, interpersonal issues. Another thing is we strongly believe in reinforcement. So after each of these web classes, people will have an opportunity to establish an action plan and go back and practice it. So we're building on the skills that we develop in one class and adding those to the next class. And between each one, you have a chance to practice it, which means that the learning process is most effective for you. We also have then a reinforcement class. So this is another 90-minute web class where we come back and we are now reinforcing and reviewing what we've talked about and hearing more about your applications and what's worked well and how this has gone for you. Last but not least, we have an e-learning course called Managing Performance Discussions. It's got a great opportunity at the end for you to actually do a role play with a fictitious person and actually go through the 7 steps. So the tuition is only $3.95 a person, and we just wanted to tell you about it. These are the next class dates. So the next session is coming up on October 30th, and then November 14th and December 5th. Now, with the e-learning course, this is a total of 6 hours of training time. But because it's virtual and e-learning, it's a lot more convenient, and it's a process. So we really believe that the best learning should be a process and not an event, that you have an opportunity to practice between sessions. And our goal is that the 5 components in the program really help you think differently about your day-to-day interactions with people. It helps you begin to start to think about your own style and identify the different people around you and how to approach them differently, how you can raise your own awareness and understand people, and really build the interpersonal skills that you need. Now, we are going to be offering one key thing, that there will be another bonus for the first 10 people that register will get the Understanding Behavioral Styles e-learning course immediately. So you can begin to start to look through that. We saw some of the audio segments from that class today, but we're going to be just giving that away to the first 10 people to register. So in summary, in terms of the benefits to you from interpersonal skills, some of the things that we've talked about, when you really can build better interpersonal skills, one of the things you know is that you have more trust with people, you have better support, your happiness goes up, you have less stress, and you get referrals and references from people. So those are just your personal benefits, but let's look at the benefits other people receive. And you're probably going to notice that this list is exactly the same. And that's because the strongest and the best interpersonal relationships are made when all the parties give and receive. So if you want these benefits for yourself, you've got to give them to other people. And too often we look at relationships kind of as a, what do I get out of this approach? And that's not how good relationships work. It's really about give and take. So think about what you want out of your interpersonal relationships at work, and then give that. And you'll be surprised at how much better your relationships are as a result. So I hope this, I hope this was helpful to you. I'm going to actually put in the chat box. I'm going to send this over to everybody. In the chat box, there's a link here that we're going to send you. There. If you look in the chat box, I just sent it to you. And in that, at that link, one of the things that you'll notice is you can learn more about this process that I just told you about, our interpersonal skills class. If you would like to learn more, we'd be happy to let you kind of go there and recognize more about it, and we're happy to do that. And in the meantime, we've got just a few minutes, and I want to try to see if I can respond to some of these questions. And let me take a look at them. It looks like a lot of them are responding to, here we go. A lot of these are responding to some of the things we asked before. If you have any additional questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to send those over. And it looks like some of it was technical issues. Okay. And yes, this presentation will be available after the session, Karen, so we're going to be sending this. It'll all go out tomorrow. And one thing that we are going to be doing is that we are going to be giving everyone a kind of a flip book that's going to put everything in kind of a e-book format, but you can go through it quickly. So if you also want to move through it quickly, you'll be able to do that. So look for that from us. And I hope this was helpful to you today. Please feel free to send us any thoughts that you have about how we can improve our programs or what would be most helpful to you. We really do appreciate your feedback. And so when you log off today, the feedback form will come up. You can have an opportunity there to let us know if you would like to register for our blog or if you'd like us to send you any more information. But I would just like to close by saying it's really been a pleasure to be with you this hour, to share some things about, that we've seen have really made a difference in the companies that we've worked with and that the people that we care about the most important interpersonal skills you need at work today. We really think these can make a big difference for everyone's life, and we had such an interest in this topic from our website. I just wanted to make sure that I was sharing with you some information that you thought would be helpful. If you'd like to learn more, please feel free to do that. And I'd like to say thank you so much to everyone. It's been a pleasure. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.